Boker Tov. Today's daf is daf Nun Hey in Nizir. The Gemara was discussing yesterday's mission, important mission. If you haven't studied it carefully, it's to tell you the cases where you're tamei, but it doesn't knock off the entire Naziris. If anything, it just suspends it. It suspends the Naziris because it's either a tumah drabanan or it's a suffix, or it's the case of a mitzora who finishes his Naziris. And at the end of his Naziris, after he's pronounced to be that the disease is no longer there, he has to, that's called, while he's in his final stage, it's called Yomei Chaluta, when he's actually a Nazir and when he's actually Metzora and has to go into seclusion outside of the Machnot. And that period of time does not knock off his ears, but it suspends it. And the same thing, after he's pronounced Torah, he has to cut his hair. There it's all the hair of his body, all the exposed hair of the body. And Nazir only cuts off his head hair. Here he cuts off all his body hair that's exposed, not the part that's not exposed, but he cuts it all off. And then he has to cut it off again at the end of his Yemei Tara, meaning his Metzora period is over, cuts his hair, 7 days of counting, similar to a Zav or Zava, 7 days of clean, then he cuts his hair again. So those times do not knock off the Naziris. In other words, the Naziris that he counted before, it's just suspended, and then he picks it up from there. But it's not like a Nazir who became Tamei Mace and went to a funeral. His whole Naziris is knocked off. Counts 7 days of Tumah, and he has to shave at the end, bring karbanos, and then he starts the Naziris all over again.
But the Matzora, he has to shave.
Yeah.
So he has to also have 30 days at the end.
That's right. He has to have 30 days at the end. We're going to talk about that. Good. Knocks off part of it. Yeah, exactly. We're going to talk about that today. But first, the Gemara dealt with on yesterday's daf. The Gemara asked the question: when the rabbis made a takana, you shouldn't go to Chutz La'aretz. It's tamei there, the goyim, etc. It's tamei. Is it because when you step there, you're stepping on graves, goyish graves, and etc.? Maybe they're exposed or whatever, or is it because the air in general, even the air is tamei? So that's less of a tumah. It's just that the whole air, the whole atmosphere of Chutz La'aretz is tamei. So the Gemara raised that question and tried to prove it one way or another. So one way or another. Then the Gemara is going to try to prove it from our case. First, the Gemara said yesterday, well, look at our Mishnah. It must be, says, our Mishnah says that even though it doesn't knock off in the cases of Tumah that he talked about, it doesn't knock off the Naziris, but still you have to get sprinkled on the third and seventh day and go to the mikveh. And if it's only because of Avir, why would you need a Hazah? Hazah is if you touch the dead body, possibly you touch the dead body of a goy. We saw that the goy is also metame if you touch it. Maybe because of that, but just because of the air. So the Gemara says no. Maybe the air is when we talked about that you have to sprinkle on third and seventh day. It doesn't talk about all the cases of the Mishnah, only certain cases of the Mishnah, and therefore, there's no proof from our Mishnah. So the Gemara now says at the top of Nun Hey, lemiketanoi. Maybe it's machlokas tanon. This question is: what's the reason why the rabbis were gozer tumah Chutz La'aretz? Is it because of avir? Or is it because of gush? Gush means maybe, because it's like you're on the ground there. If you touch the ground, or it's like you touch the ground, that's more of a chumradika thing, and that's why there were gozer. That's why there were gozer tumah. Let me get to know. And nechnas la'aretz. Let's say you went into Chutz La'aretz, b'shita tavim migdal. You went into a box, a chest, or some sort of a turret, some sort of a box, an enclosed box. Rebbe says you're still tummy. Rebbe matame. Rebbe Yosef Rebbe Yehuda matar. Rebbe Yosef says you're Torah. My love. Maybe that's machlokas. Rebbe said mishum avira. Even though you didn't touch the ground because you went inside the box, but you were in the airspace of Chutz La'aretz, and therefore you're tamei. That's why Rebbe says you're tamei. Rebbe Yehuda says you're Torah. Yes, Rebbe Yehuda says mishum gusha. It's only because of the ground. But if you're not exposed to the ground because you're in a box, maybe not. So maybe that's the machlokas here. Is it because of the gush or is it because of the avir? And then after is how chomer is it? If you would say maybe if it's because of the gush, maybe you should get sprinkled on the third and seventh days and go to the mikveh. If it's only because of the avir, then you don't need the sprinkling. Maybe that's one nafkamina, and there could be other nafkaminas. So Gemara says, well, it's not a machlokas. The kuliyama mishum gush. Everybody says that the reason why you're tamei is because of the gush, meaning the clods of earth, the earth itself. Marsav or Ohel Zark, here's the problem. When you're in a box, that's like an Ohel, right? But if it's a movable Ohel, like it's in motion now, is that considered a proper Ohel? Remember, when it comes to Tumah and Tara, we learned that if you're in a room, an Ohel, that brings Tumah if you're in a room with a dead body. And it also if you're above the room, if the whole box prevents the tumah from going outside. That's the rules of tumah. But that's only by a fixed one. But by a movable one, maybe it doesn't apply. Maybe that's the issue. Everybody could hold. There's no machlokas here. We try to prove always that there's no machlokas between the Tanam. Everybody says the reason why there are gozer is because of the gush, because of the earth. Marsavar Olzar Shmeoel. Rabbi Yosef says fine. It's because of the earth, but you were inside a box. You moved. They brought you into here. It's the same. Today we did say you went in a plane, you went in an airplane or a helicopter. You were in closed space above there. So one says Olzar Shmeoel. That's still an ohel, and therefore you're protected. Therefore you're not telling me. That's what Rabbi Yosef says. You went into Chutz La'aretz in a box or an airplane or something like that. You are tar because you were in an ohel. You were separated from the ground. No, that's not an ohel. An ohel is only if it's fixed. But if it's movable, that's not an ohel. Therefore, it's like you were exposed to the ground, and therefore you're tummy. Maybe that's machlokas. How could you say? You're saying there, Rabbi Yosef holds that an ohel zaruk, a movable ohel that was like thrown, that was flying, is considered an ohel. By the time we learn in a brayso, Rabbi Yosef Omer teva shehi malaya kale. Listen, it's a box full of utensils. The zark al panemis, you threw it on top. You threw it over a dead body. There was a dead body there. Somebody says, "Pass me all those tools." And they were in a box, and you threw them over the dead body. Al panemis be'ohel tameya, right? So teva she malaya kalim the zark al panemis be'ohel tameya. Even though it was in the ohel, this box was like an ohel. Maybe the mace was in an ohel too. I'm not sure why it says hameis be'ohel, because you threw it on top of a box. What's the difference? Either way, if it's protected, if the box that you threw it in is an ohel, then it's going over the dead body wherever the dead body was. But in any case, he says it's tamei. So if it was on the ground, if this was on top of the ground in the same ohel, here it makes sense to say al panei mace ohel. In other words, in the mace, there was a mace in a room, and you had a box full of kalim in the room, but the box was a closed box. If it was mechas, then it's tar. Tahora, the kalim are tar because they were in a separate box. So, but what do you see over here? Yes, if it was stationary, then it's considered a separate ohel and it's not tummy. But if it was movable, it's exposed. Even though the mace was in an ohel, but if you threw it on top of the mace inside the ohel, since it's movable, it's not considered an ohel, and the stuff is tummy. So how can you say Rabbi Yosef that a movable tent, a movable ohel is considered an ohel? A movable overshadowing item is considered a ohel. You see, it's not. Let's go back and say, everybody holds the reason why the rabbi said that goyish lands, chutz la'aretz, is tamei, is because the air in general, the air is tamei. Marsavar kivim the lo shchicha or goes b'rabanan. Okay, it's not shchich that you're going to go flying over in a box or an airplane. So at least in those days it wasn't shchich. Therefore, the rabbanan were not gozer tuma. The gozer were tuma if you're in chutz la'aretz, but not if you're in a box. That's lo gozer. That's Rabbi Yosef Yehuda. Even though it's not very often that it happens, it's not common to go in chutz la'aretz on a box, in an enclosure. The rabbi still made exera. So that's the question. Did the rabbis go there chutz la'aretz even because of avira? Was it because even in cases which are unlikely, uncommon? Rabbi says yes, and therefore, if you went in a box, everybody could hold that a box is no good. A movable box is not considered an ohel. But the question over here is, the rabbis made exer about the avir. So you went in a box, and the box is not really an ohel. But Rabbi Yosef says, since this is a very uncommon occurrence, the rabbis were not gozer tuma in that case. If you went in a box, even though the box is not an ohel, but it's unlikely to happen. Therefore, the rabbanan were not gozer. But what Rabbi says, no, the rabbanan were gozer anyway. Tanya, here's a proof of this, because the following sheet is Rabbi Yosef Yehuda, who we're saying now holds what? That an ohel zaruk, a movable ohel, is not considered an ohel unless it's stationary. And yet he says over here that it's tar if you went in chutz la'aretz in a box. Why? Unless it's stationary, it's not no. So why does it work? If you went in a box, tar. If you went in a wagon or in a ship, ubeskari means and its mast. It means the ship and the mast. If you went in a ship or a wagon, that's common. There you're tamei. So you see what's the difference? If you went, both of them are movable. If you went in a box or a turret or something like that, a chest, then you're tar. If you went in on a wagon or or a boat, where either way you weren't touching the ground, you're telling me what's the difference? The difference is that one is common and one's not. So you see, this is a good answer, that everybody holds that an immovable ohel is not an ohel. It's not an ohel. And the reason, and the machlokas is here, everybody holds that the rabbis made a takana of chutzos because of the avir. But the question is whether it goes or even an uncommon case. Rabbi Yosef says not, and Rabbi says this. And going back to now the previous part, everybody holds that the rabbis were gozer chutzos because of the gush, because of the ground, not because of the air. And everybody holds that ohel zarek, maybe it is an ohel. Maybe it is an ohel. Really, even if it's like today, we have an airplane or something like that, you're flying over, or an enclosure, you're in an enclosure, that's still considered an ohel. And that Shiloh about before, remember people are flying a plane over cemeteries, etc. The whole thing came up. So here, no, everybody holds it could be an ohel. And the Rabbanan goes, so what's machlokas? Everybody say, the Shiloh over here is maybe you'd stick your head out. So in an airplane, it's hard to do that, right? But maybe in a helicopter, you could. So that's the question. And this is a proof. Unless you stuck your head out or most of your body out, then you're done. But that's a proof. Rabbi Yosef says you're Torah, whereas Rebbe will hold no. Maybe the rabbi said if you go in a box, you're already tamei because maybe you'll stick your head out, not because of the air, but because of the gush. If you stick your head out, it's like you're standing on the gush. That's what Rashi says in the second of the wide lines. But time did a Messiah later. Rabbi Yosef so he asked the kasha. Wait a minute. Rabbi Yosef said before, if you throw a box full of metal instruments, let's say a kalim or whatever, over a dead body, there we say you're tamei. What do you mean? If oil zarek ishmael, what's the problem? Al pnei ames tameya. Rashi doesn't put in the oil. Al pnei ames tameya. Lav mishum niksav oil zarek lav shmeil. It's not because it's not oil. Elikivim the zarka kamapik. Once you throw a box full of kalim over the mess, it's not an oil anymore. It's simply a kli. It's a large box holding stuff. Mishavalei Torah's kli. Lo niksav oil zarek shmeil. Like he said before, Rabbi Yosef said before in the previous brisa, we said the brisa of Rabbi Yosef says a table is full of kale is tamei, but if it was stationary, then it is a very good ohel, and it does protect the kalim from becoming tamei from the dead body. So here we have this shaila whether Eretz Am was nigzer because of the gush, because of the ground, or because of the airspace. And we could not determine that it's a machlokus between Rebbe and Rabbi Yosef Yehuda. Rebbe and Rabbi Yosef Yehuda can both hold either way. Either we say that it's because of the avir. That was the good answer that we came up with, right? Everybody else gives the avir. But one says that it's not shchiach to come in. Rabbi Yosef says since it's not shchiach to fly in that way, even an oil zarek, let's say, is not an oil, but it's not shchiach, and therefore the Rabbanan weren't gozer. But Rabbi holds that they would gozer even though it's not shchiach, and therefore we're saying over here that everybody could hold. Right? The kol yam mishum. First answer was Rabbi holds over the gush. The second answer was no. The kol yam mishum avira. Question is whether it gozer or not. The third answer that we came out was no. That everybody holds it's because of the gush, and everybody holds that it's a good OL, even it's fine. The question over here is whether it gozer, maybe you'll stick your head out or not. But everybody agrees. Whether it's a gush or whether it's or because of the avir, it could go either way. But there's no machlok necessarily between Rav Shapiro and Rebbe. So the Mishnah said a maskul marmiyat. Here we come to an issue which will take us into tomorrow's daf. What do we say? Let's understand first the Mishnah. Remember again, like you said at the beginning of this year, Avram asked this question. We said if you are Nazir and you become tamei mess funeral, right? You got to be your tamei for 7 days. Start all over again. Purify yourself. Bring korbanos. Start all over again. If though it was one of these other things, like a suffix, if you were tamei or not, or a drabanan, or you may sifra may gomer, you may sifra gomer means the days a mitzora. What happens? A mitzora develops some sort of a skin disease. He's checked by the Kohen. The Kohen sends him away. That's called Yomei Hezger while he's checked for a week or for 2 weeks. If it can't be determined after the first week, there's no change. The second week, after the second week, there's no change. Let him go. If it got worse, he's called a mitzora. Gemura or muchlat. He's an absolute mitzora, and he has to stay out of the community, out of all the community, for as long as the tsaras lasts, maybe a month or two, maybe a year, whatever it is. After he's checked periodically, and if it turns out that it's okay, that the disease has gone away, so he's freed, at which time he shaves all the hair, all the exposed hair on his body, not just the hair. The Nazir just cuts his hair, his head hair. The Masorah cuts all his body hair that's exposed. And then he has to do another Yomei Tahara, 7 days of Tahara, just like a Zava, 7 days of Tahara, just like 7 days of Tahara of a Tamei Meis, if you touch the dead body. And then he follows that, though, as a regular Tamei Meis doesn't have to bring korbanos. But after the 7 days of Yomei Tahara, he has to cut his hair off and bring korbanos again. So this called either Yomei Gomro or Yomei Chaluto, those days in which he is sealed away, right? Or the days in which he's tar already, but he has to keep 7 days of Tara. Those days do not knock off his Nazirus. It doesn't sound like he went to a funeral in which he's got to start all over again. That's what we say. He doesn't have to shave just those days, but he needs 30 days, like you pointed out. It doesn't knock off the previous days. So if he had days before, he could start counting right away, right? But carbon no carbonos. As soon as the 7th day happens, he can start counting right away. The Gemara said that the Anamad Alf that starts counting 7th day. Okay, now for the Zav and Zav is different. Zav and Zava, those days actually count towards the Naziris. What we're saying over here, let's understand this, because you have to understand this very clear before we start. As opposed to a Tamei Meis, a person who went to a funeral, as opposed to a Zav and Zav also, which is different there too. In the case of Yomei, while he's being purified from his saras, let's call that, while he's being purified, those days don't knock off his Naziris, but they don't count towards his Naziris. In other words, they don't count towards his 30 days or to his whatever Naziris. Let's say he's a Nazir for 50 days or 100 days, right? And he became a Metzorah in middle, and he had to be purified, etc., and he had to get shaved twice, right? Body shave, once when it's finished, and once after Yomei Tahara, and he brings karbanos. Those days don't count towards his Naziris, but they don't knock off his Naziris. He doesn't have to start counting all over again. They suspend his Naziris. That's what the Mishnah said. Now, Rav Chisda is going to make a point here, which Avram made at the beginning. Rav Chisda, lo shana ela b'Naziris. That's only by a small Naziris. I mean, let's say he's in a Nazir for 30 days. So what do we say? He's Nazir for 30 days. Naziris meruba mesek nami salkalei. By a small Naziris, meaning a Naziris, let's say, of 30 days. So, okay, his Naziris is suspended while he's a Metzorah, and then afterwards he picks it up from there. Now you might say, wait a minute, Avram asked, wait a minute, you still need 30 days of growth, right? Before he could shave, his Naziris of Tahara needs 30 days. We'll get to that. So, but he first says, that's not about Naziris, but Naziris Merubah. Let's say he was a Nazir for 100 days, okay, 100 days. And after 10 or 20 days, he became a Metzorah, and he had the days, etc. Then let's say by the 50th, 60th day, he was purified and everything. He still got, let's say, 40 days left. So in that case, you know what? He doesn't have to, not only does the Tsaras suspend his Naziris counts there. You don't stop counting the 100 days of Tahara. That's what he says. Av Naziris Meruba along Naziris, Mesek Nami Solka, it even counts. Why? Because like you said, Avram, he's got the 30 days of growth left. And so, in other words, he was a Nazir for 10 to 20. He's not a Nazir for 100 days. And after 10 or 20 days, he became a Metzorah. And he had to be locked up for a couple of weeks, or even 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever it was, as long as it was. Then he was purified another 7 days of 2 shavings, 2 sets of kabbanos, Then he does all that. And he still has 30, 40 days left of his original zeros. They count. That's what Rav Chisda says. Now, Rav Chisda, we're going to see, is going to be up your slot. He's going to be refuted. But that's his opinion. He says, what's all reason? He said, it doesn't knock off the days. Even, right, it doesn't, you said in the Mishnah, it doesn't knock off the Naziris. It just suspends it and he picks it up from there. Rav Chisda says that's only by a small Naziris, but a short Naziris, let's call it. By a long one, it can even count towards Naziris. That's what Rav Chisda says. Again, I'm Rav Chisda, Ela b'Naziris Metzav, Naziris Meruba, Vesagami Salkei. Must Rav Sharpia, wait a minute. No. What does our Mishnah say? Our Mishnah says, Maschil umona miyad, right? That's what it said at the top of Nundal Adamid Bays, right? And he could start counting right away. The Einam Babato Bahen doesn't knock off the first days. What do you mean it doesn't knock off the first days? But if we're talking about really a short Nazirus of 30 days, whenever it was, right? Let's say he was a Nazir for 30 days and he became Mitzorah on day 2. Right away, day 2, he became Mitzorah, right? Even if he became Nazirus on day 1 or day 2, at the very beginning, right? How do you say, well, he starts counting when he finishes the Saras purification, and it doesn't knock off the first days. What is knock off the days? He needs 30 full days. He won't have 30 full days. If he became a Mitzorah after he started becoming a Nazir, he doesn't have 30 full days. Let's say he became, on a simple case, he became Nazir on day 2 or day 3, right? He became Mitzorah on day 2 or day 3. So when he finishes and he's shaved, he has 27, 28 days left. You need 30 days of counting. So what do you mean it doesn't knock off the curve? Of course it knocks off the first days because he's got to count 30 days anyway. Elavan is yes Meruba. Elamai, the Mishnah is speaking about by a long Naziris. Let's say a Naziris of 100 days. Okay. And still the Mishnah says, you start counting right away, start counting all over again. Doesn't knock off the first days. You start counting all over again, even though there's plenty of days left. But it's suspended. You could start counting again, meaning you've suspended it, but you pick it there. What do you mean? Why do you have to start counting again? If you were a Nazir for 100 days, like I said, 100 for 100 days, you became Mitzorah even on day 10, right? So you had your purification process by day 40, 50, 60, you still got plenty of 30 days left. Why say you start counting again from there? When do you start counting? You never stopped. You never stopped because the Nazir Saftara spans the Mitzaras period. What's your problem? So even though Rav Sharvi asked this kasha on Rav Chisda, he answered it. You know why? The Nazir's Bas Chamishim Yom. I'll tell you what the Mishnah is speaking about. The Mishnah is speaking about Nazir. Let's say it was a Nazir for 50 days, right? For 50 days. The Yosef Esrim, let's say he was a Nazir for 20 days. This Yalda Beitz Ras, and he became Mitzorah. And let's say he finished it when? Later on. The Nazir, and the Islay Gidosayr, he still needs more time. In other words, when he was purified from being a Mitzorah, he was a Nazir for 20 days, right? Then he became a Mitzorah for 20, 30 days, whatever. When he finished, what happens? He doesn't have 30 days. He needs 30 days of Tzara. You can't say that the time just goes on, that he continues counting from his first one, because if he had a shave after being a Mitzorah, he doesn't have 30 days growth. And as you need 30 days growth, by 100 days it works, but by 50 days not. So you could say, Rav Chisda could maintain, by 100 days, my argument still stands. I became Mitzorah on day 10 or 20 of my 100-day Naziris, and I was a Mitzorah for a month and a half, finished it. I still have 30 days left of Naziris to shave on. I got to shave after 30. I need 30 days of hair growth in order to shave at the end. So you could say that the Tsaras did not affect his Naziris time at all. He became a Nazir on day 1, and on day 100 he finishes, even though he was a Mitzorah in middle. That's what Rav Chisda maintains. What about our Mishnah? It says no. You start counting again. Not that our Mishnah doesn't say you start counting from the beginning. We say it's suspended, but you start counting again. When do you start counting again? You didn't have to start again. You were in the middle already. Right? So what do you mean? They don't count. You start counting. They don't count. They should count. The answer is Amish is speaking about a case where if you continued counting, you wouldn't have 30 days. You were a Nazir for 50 days, and you in Mishnah Gemara gives example. You became a Mitzorah, Yosef Esrin. You were a Nazir for. You became a Mitzorah after 20 days, whatever. You became a Nazir on 10 days, after 10 days. And then you were a Mitzorah for 30 or 40 days till you finished. You wouldn't, whatever it is, you don't have 30 days left. There, in a case like that, so you start counting again 30 days. You can't count again, meaning it was suspended. Let's say you became a Mitzorah on the 10th day. The Gemara's example is 20. Let's say you became a Nazir for 50 days. After 10 days, you became a Mitzorah. You stop. The counting is suspended because you got to finish your Mitzaras. When you finish your Mitzaras, let's say you're up to day 35. Up to day 35. Well, you don't have 30 days left. Your whole Nazir is only 50 days. So what do? After you finish your Tzaras, you continue the suspended count. You suspended your count at day 10 of the Naziris. Now you count another 40 or at least 30 or 40 days in this case, because you said you're going to be a Nazir for 50 days. So your account was suspended at 10, so you do 40 more days. So Rav Chisda could still maintain his argument. Now we come to a real good question. Here's what happened. Nazir became a Nazir, and on the first day that he was a Nazir, says, I'm a Nazir. Somebody died on him. His wife heard that he's a Nazir. She says, are you crazy? She had a heart attack and died in the room. And he's not sure if he left the room in time or not. And he's not sure if he's Tameh. Not only that, he's so confused that he thinks he knows he was a Mitzorah, but he thinks he's not sure if he was a Nazir Shaya Tameh B'Safik or Much B'Safik. He's not sure if he was Tameh Meis, because maybe he was exposed to his dead wife or not. And he's not sure if he knows he was a Mitzorah in the past, but he forgot if he was Nichlet B'Nirpa B'Yom Rishon Shon Nazaros, if he was healed and purified on the first day of his Naziris, meaning he didn't go through the 7 days of Tahara yet, but he was finished now, right? He finished his Naziris, he was Nirpa. Oh, he just finished his Naziris. The Kohen said, you're free to go. Happened on the same day, but he's not sure. Was it now or was it some other time? He got confused. So he's got a real problem. What is he going to do here? He became a Nazir. Listen carefully. He became a Nazir today. He's a Nazir, right? A regular Nazir is a Nazir for 30 days. Now, what's he supposed to do? He's not sure if he was Tamei Meis. If he's Tamei Meis, got to keep 7 days of Tumatara, purify himself, bring the Karbonos, and start the Naziris again. Okay, but there's another problem. He might be a Mitzorah. And if he's a Mitzorah, that suspends his whole Naziris anyway, because Mitzoras takes precedence over that. So what is he supposed to do now? What is he supposed to do? Well, you say if he was a Mitzorah and he's finished now, well, the first thing he has to do is cut his hair. But he can't cut his hair. Why? He's a Nazir. This is the first day of his Naziris. First day of his Naziris. And he's not sure if he was a Mitzorah or not. He says possibility he was a Mitzorah. So he's really stuck. What happens? So the Gemara says, top of Nun Vav, he can only eat kachim. Now remember, a Nazir could eat kachim. Just a Tamei person or a Mitzorah cannot eat kachim. After 60 days, listen carefully, after 60 days he can eat kachim. He finishes Naziris basically after 120 days. Right? Now why is that? Why is that? Because he's not sure what he could do. Remember, he's a Nazir now for sure. He thinks he might be Tamei, may not. He thinks he might have just finished his Saras, in which case he has to cut his hair, keep 7 days of purification, right? Purification, then cut his hair again, if he was Mitzorah. Then besides that, he was also Tamei Meis. Now, but every time, so let's say, can he cut his hair now? No, he can't, because maybe he wasn't Tamei at all. And he's a Nazir. Nazir can't cut his hair. So what could he do? What could he do? He waits 30 days. Listen carefully. He waits 30 days. What does he do after 30 days? After 30 days, he can cut his hair. Because if he was a Nazir, no problem. But now when he cuts his hair, it's possible that That he was a Mitzorah, right? And therefore, when he cut his hair, that was first for the Tsaras. Okay. Then what is he going to do? What's he going to do if he was a Mitzorah? His Naziris was suspended. So he's still a Nazir. And he's got to wait another 30 days before he cut his hair. So he waits another 30 days, cuts his hair. But after he cut his hair, after 60 days, he says, okay, I want to drink wine now. No. Maybe you were a Mitzorah. You said you're not sure if you're a Mitzorah. If you're a Mitzorah, what do you have to do? You got to cut your hair twice. After the first after you finish is Chaluka, then after Tara. So now you cut your hair again. And now that maybe you're Tamei Meis. Maybe you're a Nazir whose Mitzaras was suspended, and the 2 times you cut your hair after 30 days and after, why'd you wait after 30 days and 6 days? You can't cut it for some days because maybe you're a Nazir Tahar and you can't cut it. So after 60 days, you want to drink wine. No, you can't do that. Why? Because maybe the 2 times you cut your hair at 30 days and 60 days, you was because of Tsaras, and now you have to keep, and you said maybe your wife died on you in the room. Maybe you have to keep Naziris of Tumah and be be purified for that. Okay, so wait 7 days? No, because maybe you weren't Tamei Meis. Maybe you were only at Tsaras and not Tamei Meis. And now you're a regular Nazir. You got to keep 30 days. You can't shave in the middle of the 30-day period. Now you're up to 90 days. Okay. After 90 days, you cut your hair, you shave and you cut your hair. You say, can I drink wine now? No, because maybe at the 30-day mark, that was the first Tsaras cutting. At the 60-day mark, it was the second Tsaras cutting. At the 90-day mark, that was for your Tamei Meis. So and maybe now you're regular Nazir. So from 90 days to 120 days, you're a regular Nazir. After 120 days, you're free to go. Now you can drink wine and go to funerals. Understand? Now, and Rashi explains the whole thing over. Rashi says, you see, if he was a Metzora and a Metzora and Tamei Meis for sure, let's say he was for sure Metzora Tamei Meis, very good. So that takes precedence, that suspends the Naziris. He cuts his hair immediately. What happened? It's the first day of the Naziris. First day of the Naziris, what happened? He knows he was also just finished his Tzaras period. Just finished the Tzaras period, he's got to cut his hair immediately. After 7 days, he cuts his hair again for Tzaras, for the purification process, right? Then that's after 7 days. Then he keeps his Naziris the Tumah because he went to a funeral. You're talking about difference if he knows for sure, if he didn't know for sure. If he knows for sure, so he cuts his hair immediately on the first day of the Naziris, which is the end of the Tzaras. Cuts his hair again on the 7 days later. 7 days later, he cuts his hair for the second Tzaras. 7 days later, he cuts his hair for Naziris of Tumah because he went to a funeral. His wife died on him. Then he keeps 30 days of Naziris. So how many days we have? Total of 44. First day, 8th day, 14th day, let's say, the 7th day, the 14th day, 44 days, he's done. But because he doesn't know, he can't cut his hair during any of the 30-day periods because maybe he's a regular Nazir, then you're not allowed to cut your hair. So it says in this case, listen carefully. All the catch him after 60 days. After 120 days. The Tani Allah, okay, we just explained why that is, because it's a suffix. Suffix is worse than Badai. And again, the Tzaras, as we'll see, we're going to talk about that on the test, is the Tzaras suspends the Naziris. The Tani Allah Medra are more on Naziris, but that's all when he was a short Nazir. The Naziris that he took upon himself was a 30-day Naziris, like we've just explained the days. Let's say he became a Nazir for a year. I'm going to be a Nazir for a year. Now he's got a problem. In the first year, he can't cut his hair. He's at Suffolk if he's a Metzora, Suffolk if he went to the Tamei Meis. He can't cut his hair at all during the first year because maybe he's not Tamei at all. Maybe he wasn't a Metzora, maybe he wasn't Tamei Meis, so he can't cut his hair. So the 30-day periods, the 4 30-day periods we're talking about now are extended to 4 years. So that's he can eat kachim when after 2 years. Why can he eat kachim then? Because then he is no longer tamei. Because either way, when he went to the mikveh and purified himself after 30 days, either way, if he was tamei meis, right? If he was tamei meis, so he was purified then anyway. And if he was a mitzvah, he was purified then anyway. So he can eat kachim right away. Again, he can't cut his hair and he can't drink wine because maybe he can't cut his hair because maybe he's a regular nazir now. And he can't drink wine, and he can't be tamei meis, but he's Torah for sure because he's gone to the mikveh and purified himself already a couple of times. So after 2 years, he can eat kachim. After 4 years, he could do that. Wait a minute. What did Rav Chisda say? Rav Chisda, let's go back to Rav Chisda explaining our Mishnah. He said when the Tzaras suspends the Naziris, if it's a long Naziris, none of the days of Naziris are affected, right? Because you're a Nazir, you became a Metzora, purified yourself over 20, 30, 40 days, as long as it took, right? And you still have 30 days that you can grow your hair before the Naziris is over. So you're okay. So over here in this case, why do you need the 4th year? After 3 years, you've definitely finished your Tzaras cutting, the 2 cuttings, and the Tamei Meis cuttings. And now, what did you do? You had said all you need is 30 days of growth. And then you've got it all covered. Because according to Rav Chisda, if you accepted yourself upon a Naziris of a year, right? As long as you have 30 days growth at the end of the year, you're okay. At the end of the year. So here too, even if he was a Metzora for the first 2 years of that, right? He purified himself Metzora, but they count towards his Naziris. The only problem is he needs 30 days of growth. So after he cut his hair, after the 3rd year, again, why the 3rd year? The end of the 1st and the 2nd years for the Tzaras, the end of the 3rd year for the Tumah, again, the Suffolk, then all he needs is 30 days of growth. Why does it say over there in the Brisa, if he was a Nazir for a year, not 30 days, it's not 120 days, but it's 4 years. Why 4 years? 3 years and 30 days is all you need. That's one kasha on Rav Chisda, and that's a good kasha. In other words, we're disproving Rav Chisda. Rav Chisda says that if you're a Nazir for a long period of time, all these cases in the Mishnah suspends it. Yes, not only does it suspend it, but in the case of Tsaras, doesn't even suspend it. As long as you have 30 days of growth, the days that you're a Mitzorah count towards your Naziris. Not that it's suspended and you start counting from the time that you became a Mitzorah. Rather, the time you're a Mitzorah still count towards your days of Naziris. That's what Rav Chisda said. Here we've just disproved that from the fact that you say you need a full year at the end, because we're saying the days of the Tsaras do not count. They suspend it, but they don't count towards your Naziris. If they counted towards Naziris, he wouldn't need a fourth year. All he would need is 30 days of growth. But Mas Rav Ashi. Now Rav Ashi asks another kasha on Rav Chisda. What do we say in our Mishnah? That the days that he's tamei, right, don't count for there. You may chalutim, and how do I know that, right? When he's tamei mace, does the days not only does it mace, not only does it knock off the zeros, they surely don't count towards the zeros. But the days of tumah don't count towards the zeros, towards your zeros of Tara. You may chalutim when he's a mitzorah. How do we know that those days don't count? The dinu, so it's a kavachomer. You may first we're not a kavachomer. First we're going to say a matzah, just a comparison. Then you may tumah megaleach or maybe carbon. When he's tamei mace, when he's a nazir, he shaves and brings a carbon. Mechaluta also megaleach maybe carbon. He brings he shaves and brings a carbon when he finishes his tsaras. Ma'im meitumaso ein loman. Just like meituma don't count from him, because there the Torah says clearly that he has to start all over again, right? The yom rishonim no flim. Ein olam amin. After mechaluto ein olam amin. The days that also don't count. So they don't count. They don't count for the minion. That's what they don't count. So that's not a good answer. You may tuma knock off the first days. Don't knock off the first days, as we said. Remember, they just don't count towards the Naziris, but they don't knock it off. The Naziris count is suspended. So I say, no, I'll say Kavachomer. Man Nazir Bekever. A Nazir Bekever means a Nazir who accepted the Naziris while he's at a funeral, while he's in a cemetery. Remember, we talked about at the beginning. So what happens? They don't count. Shesara Roy Latiglachas, the hair that he has on his head now. This Nazir who accepted Naziris when he was in a cemetery, he doesn't cut his hair when he leaves the cemetery. Right? He just waits till he's tar and starts all over again. His hair is Roy for the Tiglachas. The hair that's on his head now can be used later on when he finishes his purification process to cut. Shesara Roy Latiglachas. Naziris, that's Roy for Naziris. Ain't olam minion, those days don't count. They don't count for his minion while he's a nazir when he came in the cemetery. He may chaluta she'ain saroy tiglachas. The hair that is on his head does not count for tiglachas naziris. Why? Because he has to shave it all off before he starts counting his naziris. He may chaluta she'ain saroy tiglachas naziris. Lo koshkein, certainly we're saying over there it should not count. So you may chaluta don't count. It's clear you may chaluta do not count towards his naziris. That's what he says. Don't count towards Naziris. That's the days while he's exiled or locked up for being. So you may sifter him out. How do I know that even the 7 days where he's purified after the Saras period? How do we know those days don't count also towards his Naziris? Means they don't count. Here you're certainly saying that, right? As Rashi says at the bottom, the base for Shasar Roy with the Glachas Nazir Kramim. So here, how do we know you may suffer? We're now on the base. Just like the days when he is sealed off. They need shaving. Also need shaving. Right? Also don't count. What about the days when he wasn't a certified mitzorah? The Kohen had to certify. Just like him, he said, it looks pretty bad. Go and lock up for 7 days while he's checked. That's called Yomei Hezger before. Yomei Zigur also should be the same element. But I didn't know saying Cholet maybe a person's Cholet is Matame, what he sits on and what he lays down on. Yomei Hezger Matam Mishkam while he's Yomei Hezger. If Yomei Chaluta don't come in, Yomei Hezger also in Laminium. Amid Lo. That's not a good comparison. Why? Chaluta Shekain Chaluta Ton Tiglachas. After he finishes his Naziris, needs shaving or maybe carbon. The figure and they don't count. Tamar Meis Gero, when he's only sealed off at the beginning while he's being checked to see if the Nazir, if the Tzarah spreads, and if he's a certified Mitzorah or not, right? Ain't Tom Tiglachas, while he's just being checked, and we don't know for sure that he's not certified yet. Ain't Tom Tiglachas, ain't maybe carbon. Lefichach, Yalumin, therefore they count for the minion. Mikan Amr, therefore they said you may sifra, you may grow, while at the end when he's just keeping his 7 days of Tara after he shaved and brought karbonas for being mukhlat, his mitzaras is finished and he just needs 7 days of Tara, or you may gomer, which is also you may chaluto, same thing. You gomer chalut, same thing. Ainol, they don't count. You may azava, like the Mishnah said at the end of Zava and Azava. There's Gerush Mitzvah while he's being sealed up, while he's being checked to see if he's Mitzvah or not. Okay, that's what the Brisa says. Tani me is what we said. The Lord made tuma shikain mebatel ben asakavin. When he's tummy mace, that knocks off Nazir. It's tummy mace knocks off the previous days. Tummy chaluto. Don't knock off the previous days. If it's a 30-day Naziris, of course it's not. It'll say you need 30 days row, so of course it knocks it all off. We're talking about a long Naziris. They don't count minion. They don't count for the. It says they don't count. Talmud says that they don't count. So here the Bryce says clearly that they don't count, even if it's a long Naziris. So this goes against Rav Chisda. So Rav Chisda is disproved here. In other words, what the Mishnah says is that if you're a Metzora and you're being purified, or you during your days of Chaluta, those days don't count at all towards your Naziris. They don't knock off the previous period. So let's say you're a Nazir for 20 days. Let's say you became a Nazir for 100 days. Even in a case like 100 Nazirs. After 20 days, you became a Tzara. You were purified, let's say by day 60 of your Naziris, you're purified. So we said, you still have 40 days left, right? Just finish it. No, Rav Chisda just finish it and that's it. You really had 60 days. In other words, the 40 days that you were a Metzora count towards your Naziris because you still have 30 days growth. That's what Rav Chisda said. No, we've disproved him twice. Once from the case of the person who became a Nazir. He's not sure if he was also a Metzora who was just purified, who was just healed. Let's say healed and starts the purification, and he was suffocated with his tummy mace. In that case, we said if he's a Nazir for a full year, says it's 3. He has to keep 4 years. Why 4 years? 3 years and 30 days should be enough according to Rav Chisda. And we said 4 years. And also in this case here, he says clearly, Yemei Chaluto ain olelo min haminion. The Yemei Chaluto don't count for the minion. So therefore, again, in the case where he was a Nazir for 100 days, right? And after 20 days, he would be a Metzora. So let's say he was a Metzora from day 20, let's say, till day 65. Okay, you got 35 days left, still have growth? No. When he finishes his everything and he resumes his count, that's what he says. His Naziris was suspended at day 20. Now he resumes his count from day 21. He doesn't start from day 65, even though he has 30 days growth. 65 days is 35 days, plenty of time for the hair to grow, right? That would be okay, but that's not the case. Chaluto suspends it, and then you pick it up from there. If he's a Tamei Meis, it knocks off the whole thing no matter what, right? And he's got to start all over again. If he is a Metzora or any of these other cases that you're tummy for, right? That you're the tummy, at least we're talking about Metzora over here. The whole thing is we're talking about Metzora. Because the other days will also say that it doesn't knock off the previous days, it just suspends it. Here too, it just suspends it. It doesn't knock off the 20 days that you kept, but it also doesn't count towards your Naziris. Even though there's enough time afterwards, you still have 35 days left, plenty of time to grow your hair back. And logically, you might say, just pick it up from there. No, it doesn't. The Naziris is suspended, and you got to start counting from day 20. All right, we'll pick it from here.
What happens with a 50-day case?
But in the 50-day case, for sure, you need 30 days left.
Right. So then, as Rav Chisda in that case, will still be.
Rav Chisda would be moed in that case, like our Mishnah says. The first case was from our Mishnah. Our Mishnah says Maskul Lamona Miyad. That was the first kasha on Rav Chisda. What about our Mishnah? According to our Mishnah, you pick it, the Naziris is suspended, and you start counting again. Why don't you say no? Because you could say, well, that's
so that's the first question. That becomes the first upslug.
Long one, right? The kasha was Rav Chisda from a long.
Right, that's the second upslug.
It's 100 days from the Mishnah. Rav Chisda could live with our Mishnah. Because the Mishnah is speaking about where there's not enough 30 days, your Naziris was suspended by the Tzaras at day 10 or 20, and when you finished your Tzaras, you didn't have 30 days left to grow, so you just shave for your Tzaras, you don't have 30 days left. So Rav Chisda could live with our Mishnah, but the other brises are proof against Rav Chisda. All right, we'll pick them here.
Okay.
Good day.